Welcome to the panel on mathematical MOOCs. Welcome to the panel on mathematical MOOCs. My name is James Davenport. I'm the panel moderator. Can I just remind us all the title is Mathematical MOOCs, and as this is the ICM, I want to concentrate on those aspects which are specific to mathematics and the teaching of mathematics, rather than necessarily getting into a more general debate about MOOCs, fascinating that might be. Just myself, I'm from Universidad in the United Kingdom. I have substantial contact with the Open University and people studying mathematics at the Open University. For those of you who don't know the Open University, it's been running in Britain since 1969, offering what today we call MOOCs, but used to be called education by television and so on. It's also heavily involved in the Future Learn Consortium, which is a UK consortium of universities providing MOOCs. And indeed, Future Learn were advised by the Open University not to do mathematics in the first wave because of the Open University experience. Mathematics was a subject that required the most face-to-face support and so on. So that's an interesting point of view. I also use quite a lot of MOOC technology in the large classes I myself teach. And it's my personal opinion, but of course that might change after this panel, but there isn't an either-or. There's a continuous spectrum of types of courses and types of technology one uses. That's enough from me. Over to the panel to each introduce themselves and say something about their points of view. And my aim is that the majority of this time will actually be devoted to you, not to us. Bill.
Thank you. Thank you. For those who were here in the previous panel, you already know that I work in a mathematics department at the University of Auckland, but that in fact I'm a mathematics educator within the mathematics department. I do teach undergraduate mathematics to large classes, and my university also works with the Open University BBC Future Learn MOOC program. Although we are developing a statistics MOOC, so clearly New Zealand is the experimental. If it goes wrong, it's only New Zealand, and it doesn't matter. In my role in ICMI, I was asked to prepare an initial report on MOOCs for an IMU subcommittee, but that was 2 years ago, and many things have changed since then. As to my point of view on MOOCs, I wish to make 2 points. First, that MOOCs in general, and mathematical MOOCs in particular, are at a very early stage of development. We're in the very early years, and they're only one part of the impact of transformative technology on mathematics education. And the digital technology is going to transform mathematics education in many ways, and it will change things. It will change things radically, but we have no idea how that will change at the present. We must stay involved, is my point of view, and we must treat it seriously. And we must rationally use these technologies and research their impact. My second point is that I personally do not see MOOCs replacing face-to-face education of various kinds, although it will change it. My understanding of the educational process, and particularly in mathematics education, is that working together both at a distance and face-to-face is required. Indeed, one of the reasons I'm delighted and very optimistic about the development of MOOCs and MOOC technology is that they will enable us to enhance face-to-face teaching and learning. And in particular, in mathematics education, they are likely to allow us to focus much more on mentoring authentic mathematical activity at undergraduate level. Thank you.
Thanks, Bill. Matti, Pauna?
Yes, thank you. I will use some slides. Alright, so my name is Matti. I come from the University of Helsinki, Finland, from the Department of Mathematics and Statistics. And as my opening remarks, I would like to introduce some automatic assessment technologies that we are using in our online courses. I have been teaching online for almost 10 years. I have been involved in many international projects, developing and using online teaching in mathematics. And the current project that we are running is called WEX, so World Education Forecast. This is at mywex.com. All right. So we are running these courses, online courses in this mywex.com portal. We have some courses there in the front page. Let me concentrate on one example called Calculus 1 and 2. So the course is run on a platform called Moodle, and here are some of the materials. We have some videos, then handouts and etc. But here I'm more interested in exercises or assessment. So one cannot learn mathematics without doing. And for the doing also one requires feedback. So feedback is very important component in learning. And in this presentation I'm talking about automatic feedback given by the computer or feedback from other students. So maybe ideally the feedback would come from a teacher or an instructor. But in MOOCs, in very, very massive MOOCs, there wouldn't be such resources to do that. All right. So here is an example of video. Videos take a long time to produce. We are using this kind of technology that we have slides and spoken voice explaining what is happening there and little animations. So there are sort of 10-minute long videos enough for the attention span of the student. But here I come to the automatic assessment. So students work with problems online, enter answers, get immediate, meaningful feedback, and they can monitor their own progress. So the student can see where she is at the moment in her learning progress. So here is an example, very, very simple example, procedural. Solve for this equation, student gives an answer. The system will preview the answer. In this case it's 40/7, simple formula. You can imagine more complex formulas where the feedback is, the preview is important. And this time is correct, and we give detailed feedback in terms of a model solution or step-by-step solution to this problem. Here is a little bit more complex problem integrating this function, and the system assists the student in writing that there is you seem to be missing a star character, and suggesting how it should be typed. So they learn this. There is a little bit of learning how to input your answers to the system, but they learn it quite quickly. In the first week, the students will have learned this. Fine, and on the bottom here, the student has entered her formula correctly, so it's displayable. So, automatic assessment, what we are using it for instance, diagnostic tests in the beginning of the course, gives the student information and also the teacher's information where the students are, what are are they sort of handling their prerequisites. Continuous learning by practicing and getting constructive feedback. This is one thing I find very important, that one should practice. Formative assessment helps the student to learn. So assessment for learning rather than assessment of learning, which of course happens then in the end of the course. Let me mention that this system is called STACK, and it is created by Ghrist at the University of Loughborough. Sorry, I have it wrong there, Loughborough in UK. The second thing which can be scalable in MOOCs from part of this automatic assessment is peer assessment. So students submit homework online, then break and give feedback to others' work. So this is a module called workshop in Moodle. So let me explain these steps that we are implementing it, how we implement it. Students are given homework problems that are to be submitted by, let's say, Wednesday. After the submission deadline, an example solution is provided. So the instructor provides sort of a model solution or various model solutions to the problem, to the students. And also the instructor gives assessment criteria to the students. So these are the criteria how one should evaluate other students' work. And by this model solution and criteria, the students will have to grade and give constructive feedback to 5 randomly selected students by Sunday. Okay, so these are just attributes Sunday and 5. You can change them. And now students' own grade from this assignment is the average of the 5 grades. So computer calculates the average of the 5 grades, and that's the student's own grade for the homework. And now very important, the teacher's role is to monitor and support this process. So we monitor it so that there doesn't happen to be some kind of very mysterious assessments like giving too few points or too many points just automatically or something like that. And to support that. In the beginning, this type of learning is a little bit unfamiliar to the students in the beginning, so to really give good instructions and support. So some pedagogical goals that in this model that we find is that students have to study the model solution and the solutions of 5 other students. That way, 5 other students that way learning from common mistakes and trying to give corrective feedback. So, and one other pedagogical goal here is that students learn to how to communicate mathematics, give feedback to other students, receive feedback from other students, etc. Also, it creates interaction between students in an online course. So it's not only the discussion forum or something like that, messaging system that is there. Students are interacting with each other in this system, and this is scalable to MOOCs. Example of a problem, so this might be a little bit more complicated. Limit problem and show all steps of computation. Let me remark that in the automatic system, the student only submits her final answer, not the learning process. But in this system, the student will give the work also. Here is a student solution. This person has written it in this kind of notation, so there are of course these notational issues when teaching mathematics online. Some write it with a paper, take a picture and submit the picture. And here is another student's feedback to the solution. She has reduced 3 points out of the maximum. It's are overwhelmed with extra practice, etc. So she did not like the sort of the style. But I find this completely acceptable. I mean, this is okay. By her standards, this was her judgment. Finally, second to final. Lessons learned from workshops, so very clear instructions, encourage everybody to submit, even if thinking that the solution is not complete, they should submit. Assessment criteria to be designed carefully and explained to students. And make clear that students' role is not to act as a grader or an instructor here, rather to help others to learn. The project that we are currently running is called WEBS, Early Education Forecast. This is funded by NSF in the US and Academic Finland. Some people are in here. And now finally I would like to talk about this latest development. This graph that you see here, the notes are all the learning materials and activities in the Calculus 1 course. And the arrows are student transitions. So this time, my point is here to say that we get a lot of data in this system, log data of the students' actions. And now the thing is how to analyze this data in order to make the course better. Which are the most popular, for instance, which are the most popular, most visited parts of the course materials, which helped the most the student to get a better grade, etc. So learning analytics is an important subject, now an emerging subject, and we are beginning to study it. Yes, but this I would like to close.
Thank you, Matti.
So my name is Ruiz. I come from the School of Mathematics at the University of Costa Rica. I am the current Vice President of the International Commission on Mathematical Instruction with another colleague. I used to be a philosopher of mathematics some years ago, but I became very interested in mathematics education, so I am working on the field of math education as a researcher. And suddenly, a couple of years ago, something happened that you don't believe. I was asked by the Minister of Education of Costa Rica to elaborate the curriculum of all primary and secondary education. So I was criticized everybody during 20 years about what to do, what not to do in math education, and suddenly the minister comes to me and says, why did you write the curriculum? Why did you make this curriculum design for us? I said, well, here I am. So we did that, and besides that, I am directing the implementation of this curriculum in Costa Rica. Because the one thing I thought from the beginning is that a curriculum is just a paper if it doesn't get into these classrooms. And to do that, the important thing is the implementation and precisely the preparation of teachers. So, why these presentations related to an experience in such a small developing country can be useful? This is a small country. Well, because as still said before, MOOCs are in initial stage, and paths to come are not established or even clear for any one of us. So a wide and flexible perspective is necessary. So here we will present an example in the use of this e-learning strategy for a specific audience. So, as I told you, in 2012, this major reform was approved by the Council of Higher or Mathematics Education, or Education, Superior Education, Higher Education in Costa Rica. And we are working there with different courses in service, for in-service teachers, face-to-face, blended, and virtual. I'm not going to talk about the face-to-face or blended. I'm going to concentrate, of course, on the virtual. So, the first thing to say is that these virtual courses are associated to the implementation of the new curriculum and teachers' professional development. And this defines the nature of such courses, are different from others. I mean, these are not university courses, are for teachers, in-service teachers. So, from September to December of this same year, I mean, that's just in 1 month to begin, we're going to have 7 courses, and we're preparing 5 more for the next year and 5 more for the following year in 2016. So, this is the website of our courses, of course in Spanish, and that's the address. And we're going to have 3 courses for primary education, and these other 4 for secondary education. So you see geometry, numbers, relations and algebra, and probability. What is the content and approach of these courses? Well, the content of these courses is not mathematics, but at the same time, not general pedagogy, but a specific pedagogy of mathematics oriented towards the classroom, which does something very important for the implementation of the curriculum. Why MOOCs? Because MOOCs provide an attractive, dynamic alternative through videos. So we can have this, let's say, more personal contact with prestigious researchers who elaborated the new curriculum and conduct its implementations. Third, it's relatively an easy elaboration of these courses because videos can be recorded in a very simple way. But one of the lessons we have is that some months ago, let's say a year before, we thought MOOCs would be easy to elaborate. Now we know that it's not that easy, but anyhow, it's easier than any other virtual strategies for courses.
Es importante valorar el tipo de información que pueden generar las diferentes representaciones de una relación. Si se hace una representación.
This is an example of one of the MOOCs on relations and algebra. You see, we're using basically PowerPoint presentations and all the possibilities this give us, and we always have a person talking to you. So there's a clear eye contact with the professor of the course. Something interesting about these courses is related to the completion rate, some quotas, and face-to-face activities. First of all, I hope we have a greater completion rate with these courses. Why? Because these courses are oriented towards a very specific population. They're not for everybody. And at the same time, we are in the middle of this curriculum reform that must be implemented. So there is kind of, let's say, a very useful thing for the teachers in our country. At the same time, this is a very interesting thing. We establish a maximum number of participants in every course. Why? Because we don't have all the resources, the human resources, to attend these courses. Because everything can be very automated, but you have forums where you have to deal with, you have to attend those forums, so it's not that easy if you don't have all the human resources, all the people to help you. At the same time, we have some face-to-face activities, but this is not provided directly by me or my team, but by the structure of the Ministry of Education. What's the whole idea? The whole idea is to support somehow the teachers who participate in these courses. So the courses are online, but there are some activities which are face-to-face. Are MOOCs in Costa Rica a mutation? Well, first of all, not intended for higher education, but for the preparation of in-service teachers. Second, open courses, but not so massive. Maximum quotas were established. And third, virtual, but the participants will have some face-to-face support. So, a mutation or not a mutation? I think that after we develop these courses in the next months, we have to try to obtain some lessons. And I will say that the dimensions we want to do that are the participants' involvement, let's say attitudes and the social impact of the courses. Second, the completion rates. We have to see what happens under these conditions. The ways of assessment, which is very important. We have assessment strategies within these courses. The accreditation of courses, which is very important, because for teachers it's important to get some credit in their development, professional development regimes. So we are not having that so far because the legislation in Costa Rica is a little bit old and fixed, but this is something that we want to explore. And finally, of course, the course design. How are going to be the next videos? I mean, MOOCs are not just to make a, let's say, a translation for a face-to-face class into videos. I mean, we have to change the whole idea. We cannot have, for instance, 30 minutes or 40 minutes lectures on a video. We have basically 5 minutes, 7 minutes videos with a lot of interactive activities. So we have to find some lessons about that. I believe that some lessons may apply to MOOCs in general, but I think that perhaps it can give us inputs on how to use MOOCs in a developing country. So thanks for your attention.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. I am Robert Ghrist. I'm a research mathematician and engineer at the University of Pennsylvania. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience with MOOCs. If we can run that slideshow, please, then we'll get going. I'm going to keep it pretty brief. I'm going to tell you about the calculus course that I ran through Penn's partnership with Coursera, a major MOOC provider. Let me start off with the basic facts. A gazillion people sign up for the course. Only about half of them ever show up and watch videos or do anything, and a very small portion of those make it all the way through 14 weeks of hard work to the end. For me, the number that really matters is not how many people make it to the end, but how much content is transferred. And that's the number that it was really somewhat pleasing to me. There have been over 1.6 million videos viewed at 15 minutes a pop. That's a lot of time spent absorbing the ideas and principles of calculus. So the course is run like a lot of other MOOCs. There are an array of lectures that come out over time. After each lecture, there's a homework assignment that takes 1 to maybe several hours to go through. If you'd like more information on it, there's plenty of things that you can look up, or you can just hit my webpage and see. Rather than tell you about that, I want to show you. And the big idea is that video lecturing is perfect for mathematics. Our subject has a real advantage over other subjects because of what video can do. And rather than just tell you about it, I want to show you. So the next few minutes are going to be some clips of things that you'll see in the course. In these videos, you have about 30 seconds of my talking head telling you what's going to happen, then a series of PowerPoint slides that go through principles, examples, back to me saying what we're going to learn in the next lesson. Now, what is a little bit unique about this is that I put a lot of effort into taking advantage of what video can really do. That means you've got a lot of colors, you've got a lot of motion, animation is very dynamic. The style is something in between a comic book and a video game that is very disarming and draws students in. But most importantly, it allows me to do what we as mathematicians want to do. That is, show our students what we see in our heads when we think about these things, when we think about mathematics. And that is, for me, the greatest point of optimism about MOOCs is that it allows us to increase the bandwidth in terms of our communication. Mathematics, as we all know, is a very, very subtle art. Its beauties are hidden, and it takes years of discipline and training to be able to reveal those beauties and appreciate them. And so we are at a relative disadvantage compared to other fields in terms of outreach. With the advent of a video medium and with sufficient care put into how we communicate the beauties and truths of our subject, I see a future where we have a lot more math majors because we can communicate better, because we can show many of the higher and more beautiful truths. We all complain about the fact that our students think that math problems are just tricks, learned like a robot. You follow the pattern and keep going. We all know that it's not that way, but we all struggle with how to show that to our students. It's not that easy on a chalkboard. It's doable, but with increased bandwidth, with the ability to animate and show off how dynamic the principles of mathematics are, it's going to be a lot easier for us to communicate not only to our students, but to the rest of the world as well. And that is very important for how mathematics is going to survive into the future. Now, the nitty-gritty details, well, you know, this is just the beginning. There's a lot more work to be done, and what I would like to see is a future where we have a lot more mathematicians creating content. This is very much just an initial work, and it's going to take a lot of work on our behalf in order to get this done. Thanks for your attention.
Right, thank you to all the panelists who presented some wonderful snippets from various areas. So, the floor is yours. Yeah, thank you. I just reminded, can people who are asking questions start out by saying their name, their institution, and if it's not blindly obvious, their country as well. Thank you. You can't all be stunned by the presentations you've just seen into silence, surely.
Sorry, hi, nice presentations. My name is Rodrigo. I work in the US at NYU. I'm a postdoc. So in the US, there's a lot of heated discussion about what these things are going to do to everything. And as a young researcher myself, I don't know how that's going to affect me. But a question that I've been wondering about when people talk and write about these things is, and I haven't been able to answer this for myself, is why do we need these things? Like, what is the problem that they're fixing or that they're going to fix? What is this, just a big waste of money? If not, why is it not a big waste of money to produce these things? I just personally don't understand. I'm not saying that we don't need them, I just don't know what problem it's meant to solve. So, please.
Thank you. I'll hand that one over to the others. I'd just like to say one particular example where I can see it's not a MOOC in the sense it's not open, but for example, many British universities collaborate on courses taught to doctoral students because no one university has the critical mass. So one professor at one university gives a course and students from other universities sit on it electronically. It's not quite a MOOC, but it's certainly solving a problem. I'm not convinced that there is one single problem that MOOCs solve, but I'll ask the others. Bill.
I think there are potentially a number of problems that they solve. So one has been beautifully illustrated, I think, about the repetitive and often stultifying nature of a lot of the teaching that goes on that needs some improvement in order to encourage students. I think that's it. Potentially reach to students. This hasn't, in some ways, MOOCs seem to deal with that. But my flip answer to your question is, what problem does evolution solve? And in a way, it's the same. I think we are in an evolving world, and we need to adapt to that world, and in particular, we need to adapt to the world of our students, I would say.
Matti?
Yes, I also think that there is maybe not a single problem that MOOCs will solve, and also think that this is a sort of an evolution of education, utilizing technology. Maybe technology helps in some cases, helps in visualizations. Videos are very visual also. Then technology has this interactive component. One can interact, get feedback from the computer or via technology. So I'm imagining a huge lecture class with hundreds of students. each individual student would not sort of be sort of getting individual feedback, but these kind of technologies help each student to get more, at least more individual feedback.
A few other problems that get solved.
So can the panel, or do you want to ask that question specifically to Matti?
Sorry?
I was answering that question, sorry.
Excuse me, I missed it. Did you ask for, sorry.
No, I was just trying to answer.
Oh, okay, right.
Sorry.
Okay, yes.
Sorry.
Right.
Okay, so let's see, a couple of problems that a MOOC could solve. First of all, students can't pause me when I'm lecturing on a chalkboard. They can't rewind me. And I don't give a great lecture every time. But if I am building things into a MOOC a priori, I can tweak it and tweak it and tweak it until it is pretty close to perfect.
Yeah.
Well, I think that you cannot think that MOOCs are going to substitute other kinds of classes or strategies for studying or teaching. I mean, you have to understand that there are certain populations who are more lenient to certain strategies. For instance, if we see the history of education, we see that there is the open studies or distance education, then it came the virtual courses, and after Internet 2.0, there are other possibilities. It comes with the technology. Somehow MOOCs are a child of Internet 2.0. So, I think we have to understand the MOOCs in a wide perspective and use it in the way it's convenient for populations, segment of populations, institutions, universities, of a Ministry of Education, as we are doing in Costa Rica. For us, it solves many problems, because in this case, teachers have problems moving from one place to another to receive a course. It's less expensive at the same time, but it gives you more flexibility, because teachers can study during the nights, weekends. So for us it's been very, very important. At the same time, there is a kind of possibilities to escalate the process, to repeat it. So it solves problems for us. Last year, when I was thinking about this in Costa Rica, we were saying to ourselves, how can we get into thousands and thousands of pictures in a really fast and effective way, being just a team of 20 persons? So, of course, virtual courses, traditional virtual courses can do the job, but in a different way. MOOCs are, for us, a better solution to pursue this strategy of preparation of teachers.
Thank you. Ingrid.
I have heard of people in developing countries who like the idea of MOOCs, but they say, well, it's difficult if these things stream online and you can't download them, or I mean, yes, you can replay, but you don't always have electricity, you don't, I mean, so did you have that problem in Costa Rica? Is it a good idea to actually make it a source available under license or so on, so that people can have it locally and then look at it? I had a professor in Madagascar who said that he liked to download things and then share with his students. I mean, they couldn't afford to go to the internet. And the university internet was horrible.
Yes, that's an issue, of course. In the case of Costa Rica, we have an unequal development. So we have certain regions with good development and others which do not have it. So we have a different strategy for them. For instance, we can download some of the videos and some of the courses and bring them to the regions where they don't have the possibility. And we have done that. On the other hand, it always depends on how heavy is the material, and you can modulate that somehow. So the videos can have not the same resolution, I mean, not a high definition, but a lower definition, and that's easier. We have persons in the northern part of my country that they do this with cell phones, you see? Perhaps they can just have to climb into a tree and find a connection, but they're doing this. And I have experiences with them. So I think that this strategy gives us opportunities. Perhaps for all the developing countries it's not the same, because the degree of development is different. But I will think that in the incoming 10, 15 years, things are going to change. And we're going to have more opportunities.
It seems to me it's just as well that we didn't stop the development of radio simply because for large sections of the earth at the time it was invented it was impossible to get radio reception. Radio proved to be effective, and if indeed MOOCs and educational digital technology proves to be effective, then that will make it spread and make it available. So it goes round that way.
Anything else in panel about one? Anything else in panel about one? No. Okay.
Yes, I'm very happy of the question of Ingrid. Thank you, Ingrid, for asking this one. Though about the same line, what about, you are developing something really great, your example is nice. What about putting that under some open license, typically Creative Commons, that other people can just copy and build on your own experience? Though, the question is, what is the kind of license you are putting on your work? And do other people are allowed to just take the piece? If you have a very nice demonstration, which much I like it, can I take it and put it in my own course? No, typically under Creative Commons license CC BY. Are you ready to do up to there?
Thank you. Just before Angel answers that, can you tell us who you are, please?
I said my name already, Marie-Farge. I'm from Paris, Economics Square.
From Paris, Marie-Farge. Okay.
Okay, yes, we can do that. Of course, our courses are free for everybody. And there is a very interesting experience because these courses are online. And we intended them to be for Costa Rican teachers. But now we have Mexicans, Hondurans, Argentinians, Chileans participating in our courses. They just registered it a few weeks ago. So this is an extra dimension. It comes with the times, you see, but we are having an international experience in the region.
I really need to make a question. I need to make a precision here. Because if you put it online, everyone can download it. In fact, you cannot reuse it, because by definition, if you don't give a license, then the copyright is yours, which means I am not allowed, in fact, to reuse your course. You can sue me if I do that, you see, unless you put it officially on, it's like Wikipedia. On each Wikipedia page, it's written, it's Creative Commons license, which, thanks to that little indication, anyone can reuse it. If you don't write anything, then by default it belongs to you and no one has a right to reuse it.
Okay, yes, it's an important comment. I think we have done that, have not done that, we have put that phrase or whatever, but we are able to do it. It's in the intention of the Ministry of Education of Costa Rica to do this. So I'm going to take your comment and include it in our courses, of course.
Good, thank you. Anyone else on the panel on this point? No. Question over there.
Thorsten Koch, Technical University Berlin, Germany. I'm not sure whether you're aware there have been an article in The Economist regarding online courses recently, and their argument were basically just an economic argument, saying that given the price of education in the US, for example, online courses are just much cheaper. That a lot of people that university education is not paying off anymore for many people, and so they are looking for ways to make it cheaper. I mean, this is the case for the US, and so there seems to be a massive movement in this direction. And on the other, for not so rich countries like the US, the problem is obviously to get the resources at all. I mean, to have the possibility to get your education. And if I think even in Finland, it's not so easy to find a course nearby in mathematics in a high-level way. But just the argument that online courses is a matter of cheap giving mass education would be a major point. Just commenting on the previous one, they also said that probably going from the US courses will not be free, but let's say Harvard will of course make premium courses they give for some money then there. Do you have any comments on this direction?
So let me start off by saying that if we can improve the efficiency of delivering content by offering very low cost or free courses, assuming that the quality is good, then I don't see anything wrong with that scenario at all. No one knows what the future is going to be, but I can imagine a future where a lot of the, say, first-year courses that students at a good university would take can be done while they're in high school or before they matriculate. If, in conjunction with that, you can reduce the time to degree, then at least in my country at my school, that would have the effect of handing every graduate an extra $50,000 to $60,000 and an extra year of life. And then say, go do something with that. That is, to me, a positive good.
I think if we think about any kind of innovation, any kind of entrepreneurial innovation, we need to have people who dream what is possible and dream the impossible. Oh, this can happen. We also need to have people who are pushing for things that cannot be done. So unless we as mathematics teachers are saying, well, what we've got at the moment isn't good enough, we need to be able to, then there's not going to be innovative change. But as well as both of those people, we need to have the realists. We need to have the people who worry about issues of cost and impact on the life of a lecturer, for example. And it seems to me that this is just part of the change. And I think it's very unlikely that, you know, if the change is purely driven by an economic thing, then it's not going to last, in my vision. It's got to meet all of these criteria. If it's surely just a cost-cutting thing, then I don't think it will last, because the education won't be the quality we require.
Thanks for that. I will also point out I don't think that this is really a mathematical issue as such. It'll happen. Whatever economic change there are will transcend individual subjects. I don't see that mathematicians have either a specific closed shop on mathematics, or indeed a specific need over above the general economic one. So I don't think this is specifically a mathematical issue myself. Sorry. Ingrid.
I have a specific mathematical question about 3. I probably should have looked this up online and I would have found out, but I haven't. I mean, so how does do homeworks work on the Costa class you teach, for instance? How does the grading work? How do you manage 3 factors?
So I think that is probably one of the biggest defects of the course that I've built, because of time constraints and because of the constraints on the software platform. I did all the homeworks as multiple choice. Now, we put a lot of effort into making them very challenging, very engaging, so that they really help reinforce the material. You get some feedback if you get a wrong answer, etc. But I don't think anyone in this room is going to agree that multiple choice is the pinnacle of what we can do. I think that this is a problem that technology is going to solve, and solve pretty quickly as we get better software for adaptive exercises and learning, but we're not there yet. And I was experimenting with a lot of stuff in this course. I didn't want to also experiment with that. I kept it safe.
Matti, you've got something to say about this?
So yes, we all know that multiple choice is not the optimal solution, but when designed very well, they can really work. And in the previous discussion, we already, somebody said that students just eliminate the obvious wrong choices, or if one is asked to integrate the function, why not try to differentiate the choices? So rather than picking from a ready-made choice, student in a system like that I was explaining there, student really has to come up with her own solution. So that's important, and now it takes a lot of time to probe. It's a huge amount of work. They actually little computer programs these questions. They generate a little bit different version each time a student takes them. So each students will have a little bit different version of the quiz, but in the same level. And next time the student takes the quiz, it's a different thing. And this actually makes the students practice a lot with these automatic questions. Some students take the quiz like 10 times. If the quiz has 10 problems, so you're solving 100 mathematical problems. Okay, so it can be quite mechanical, or they can also see it as a sort of a game that I need to get the highest score no matter what, or something like that. But it makes them really practice, and this I find very, very good.
Yes, just to add to what Matti said, I've used that system slightly, and I find it can easily take me over an hour to write a question properly, and the various answers and feedbacks that go with it. It's not free to the author by any means at all. But there is technology. We've seen some of it with Matti. There's much more technology around the world in this. But one of the problems I've seen is that it's available in specific systems. It's not well supported by the massive MOOC platforms that institutional central bureaucrats tend to go out and buy. And I think, as we said in the panel brief, there are some questions specific to mathematics here. But there is an awful lot happening in this world at the moment, I think, in this area. It can move beyond multiple choice, but it's not easy, as Robert said. Lachi?
From Budapest. I mean, it's clear that we are talking about face-to-face versus possibly a better, much better instructor giving distant course. Is there any way to measure the efficiency of one against the other? Or will there be such studies in the near future?
Good question. You've done some comparative work, Matti.
Well, this is very, very little, so sort of concerning only, let's say, tens of students. So once we were running this single variable calculus in Finnish, parallel sessions, one in traditional classroom and one purely virtual. And it so happens that in that study that the students in the pure virtual got a little bit higher marks. Let me mention also that it's not, on this note, that it's not either or. So Professor Mika Seppälä, who is my colleague, now in Tallahassee, Florida State University, is using this flipped classroom way of teaching. So the same materials, the same exercises are online, and he asks the student to study the materials before, and then he rather uses like exercise classes or recitation where the students do the work there while he is supporting them. So this is one of the sessions that were running by Mika Seppälä, this flipped classroom session in Florida State, and the other sessions were more or less traditional. And Mika Seppälä, they had the same test with 3 same questions, let me say specifically. And Nika Seppala's students got a grade better than the other students. So there was a significant, I think, a little bit.
Bill, you want to say something?
Yes, I back up the idea that it's not an either or at all. My prediction for new technologies is likely to become more and more integrated in ways that are both supportive of face-to-face courses and substantive partnerships, and also leading some courses. I think all of those things are going to happen, and of course they will continue as they are. In education, testing a new educational idea is not, I'm afraid, like a drug trial. We just can't think like that because it's far too complex, I think. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. And I think that one of the things that hasn't yet happened in any significant way, as Matti said, he's really only dabbling, is to be thinking really strongly, how do we evaluate this in all the different situations in which it things, and we will get different answers in different situations.
Robert?
So perhaps a good parallel is if you look at chess, where you can set up competitions between the human and the computer. But what is absolutely the best is the human augmented with the computer software. I believe, but do not know, that the same thing is going to happen in education. That relying on very well-produced videos to give students the big picture, the motivation to excite them about the subject, and then having the human come in and work in close quarters, that, I predict, is going to be what really wins.
Jean-Marie?
Very quickly, I especially agree with the last sentence, by the way. Simply, I wanted to give one opinion about the chance of research or technology-based system to be able to really produce some intelligent assessment. It has been for more than 40 years now, I think, that intelligent artificial in education, so-called differently ITS, intelligent tutoring system, have been around, have been made overclaim about their promises. And actually, it seems to me that there is little hope in a short period of time that the situation will change. I think it could change in restricted ITS is in general for all kinds of subjects. I think that in restricted domain, so some parts of math, of course, we can do progress. But this is at the cost, again, of a lot more research that has to be carried out in math education, how to really understand how people make mistakes, how people learn, and how people gain some knowledge. We cannot accept overclaim. It was too many overclaims about the future, the brilliant future of ITS. But not a reason not to start new research and have success.
Thank you, Jean-Marie. Bill?
Yeah, just a one-sentence agreement with you that we don't assess mathematics properly now. We don't assess how good students are in exploring mathematical ideas. We don't assess all sorts of aspects of that. So to expect MOOCs to do it is maybe a bit much.
Thank you. Yes? Hi.
Hi, Roy Martinez from the University of Hidalgo in Mexico. A more mundane question. I wonder if some of the panelists can speak about some of the real-world problems that they have implementing all of this, meaning having to deal with IT people, having to hire IT people, maybe they did the software designing themselves, the graphic designing, all of that. Thank you.
Yes. So yes, as I said, I'm a developer of these materials and the systems in the courses, and it of course requires a lot of IT skills, programming and operating systems and stuff, and this is something that I sort of am doing myself. And I realized that it's also an issue in big organizations to get some special software installed to the whole university system, especially if it is in some sort of experimental stage. There would be many issues of course, taking up these new technologies, one needs to be ready to do mistakes, ready to do errors, and then react to them quite quickly. So students are extremely quick to complain about something that, okay, this thing is not working in your course. And they are not like angry, they are quite happy when I just quickly respond and correct the situation, and then it goes fine. All right, that's what I wanted to say.
Bill, do you have something? Just a personal comment is it took me 6 months to get my IT guys to install the proper version of Stack in a system that could be used in production by undergraduates because of their quality assurance loops and so on. So there's one datum. It took 6 months just to get a product that already existed installed and delivered. Robert, do you want to say anything about those?
Well, I'll say that in my experience, since you asked, it just took an enormous amount of time and there was a huge learning curve to put things together. But I would think that the right analogy here is the video game industry. When video games first started out, you could have a perfectly respectable game that was written by 1 or 2 people over the course of a couple of months. And now, the video game industry, which is larger than the music industry and larger than the movie industry, spends millions, sometimes over $100 million on a game with these enormous teams of people to design them. I think that we're on a similar trajectory in education.
At the back there, yes.
I have no doubt that this development will grow further and further and we'll have more online courses. I just wonder if anybody made a calculation, how will this affect the job market in the United States and then also the job market in the rest of the world?
Sorry, your name, please.
Sorry?
Who are you?
Mina Taisha from Israel.
Oh, right.
I thought you were going to ask, has anyone tried to make an evaluation of how this is going to change the mathematics that is learned, which I think is perhaps a more interesting question in some way. And I think it's almost certain, I really just want to open that up as a supplement to your question.
Hi, my name is Angelo Mingarelli. I'm from Carleton University in Canada. My question is more to do with the implementation of these courses. I'm all in favor. I think, actually I was in favor of them 20 years ago when I had a website. Before my university had a web presence. And when the university got its website, mine was the first on campus to have one. And I used math, and I started teaching math using the web at that time. So I'm all in favor for the idea behind these, and that it can be used to generate interest in mathematics and all the ways that it can. My problem has to do with implementation. As you referred to earlier, Dr. Ghrist, but the big problem is the amount of time that it takes. That we've already seen. At my university, we have problems with office hours. We need teaching assistants. If we're dealing with 100,000 people that registered for these courses, and in my university, my teaching assistants are trade unionized. They're only allowed to teach, they're only allowed to have 50 students for each TA. We're looking for a lot of students. More students that will be required than in all of Canada. And we can have. So there's no way we could have. And the reason for that is because of the office hours. We have to have office hours. That's in our contracts. How do we deal with office hours? Even if they're virtual, how do we deal with them in a large class like that? So there's all these problems of implementation that really worry me, and therefore our university has fought management incredibly against these, even though I personally am in favor of them. The problem is that we, as university professors, get the same credit teaching a large class such as a MOOC as we would teaching a graduate level class with 4 students. You get exactly the same credit. And then you've got the course evaluations on top of that. How, you have 100,000 students evaluating you, and you've got 3 in a graduate class. Guess what? Why would you much rather teach a graduate class? So that's my big question. But maybe you have some comments on that. Thank you.
So, I am not a trade union negotiator. I'm not going to be able to mitigate a lot of these problems. And I think you pointed out a lot of really interesting challenges that are going to have to be faced. How do universities assign credit for working on these? I did not get a teaching credit for the MOOC that I built. I did this in parallel to the other work that I did. Now, I took a risk in doing so, and that paid off absolutely when I see comments from people all over the world who thought that, wow, this is really great. So, you know, for me it was good, but that's not the model that's going to work going forward. And universities absolutely have to figure out how they're going to deal with compensation issues, deal with ownership issues. There's a lot of really sticky points. This is probably why at my university, the person that they tapped to be the coordinator for online activities was from the law school.
Right, okay, I've got a question there. White shirt first, and then yes. Yes.
Okay. My name is Ruiz. I'm from Czech. I'm working in USA. I'm in favor of the technology. In fact, I'm using paper science in my calculus class. My quiz, I feel there's missing part about the our teaching use technology is motivated the students. So my question is, how do you use the technology to motivate those students, maybe say later students, to make the button, to read, to see the videos, and do the online homework, and see the online courses?
Thank you.
I would say that MOOCs and digital technology offer the opportunity for us to offer much more exciting motivations, and that will feed on itself. That would be my answer. As amply demonstrated, I think, by Robert.
Yes, I think what you're saying is they offer the opportunity. They are not by themselves going to do it unless we put the effort in, as Robert demonstrated. It makes it possible. It doesn't guarantee it. Angela, anything you want to say on that one? You have very motivated students for other reasons.
Well, I'm working basically with teachers, not with students, university students. But I think that there is something that we have to take into account, that we are dealing with new generations. And that's something. If you were born after 1984, you are part of a different generation. You are the generation who needs to develop a visual learning. Normally, it's people who has multitasking abilities, that they don't need a guide or a manual to use a device, unless some of us who need a guide to just use the telephone. So I think that we are dealing with a new generation, or a set of generations, and we have to get closer to those generations. So, and now we have newer ones. Those kids, 8 years old, who take your phone and find some functions that you never conceived to be possible. What's the function for? You never know. You never knew. So I think that we have to take into account that context. But as has been stated here, there are many questions. There are questions about assessment. I mean, I have the same problem with the multi-choice questions. All the questions I have developed are multi-choice. And I was breaking my brains trying to find a strategy. But another strategy so far is complicated. It breaks the philosophy of this modality. So this is a question. Perhaps artificial intelligence will help us in the future, but this is a very important question. The second question is accreditation. I mean, you have it for the universities. I mean, the other colleague said before that it's tricky this about MOOCs to be free, because if you want the accreditation, sometimes you need to pay for that. But in the case of my courses in Costa Rica, they're free. The accreditation is free if we can manage to get the Costa Rican legislation to approve that.
Yes.
But that's a problem, because legislation for professional development of teachers in Costa Rica is not, let's say, modern. So accreditation is an issue. And I agree, implementation is a huge issue. So perhaps we have to go back to the first remarks of Bill in this panel. Right in the beginning, we don't know which are going to be the paths ahead. We'll find out. Perhaps in 4 years in Brazil, we can talk something more about this. But right now, I'm afraid that we don't have a clear, straight truth about MOOCs.
And the question there, yes please, yes. Come to the microphone.
Etienne Destit from the Math Research Institute in Abidjan, Côte d'Ivoire. Let me first thank the panelists and the moderator. My question is for the panelists. Before making available your work worldwide for people, can you email your presentations of today to anybody here who would like to get it? Thank you.
We can publish our presentation on the website, yes. Yes, that's a very good question. We've set up a blog site for this panel, which we will make active in view of the interest this panel has generated, and we will put the presentations on there under a CCBY license. Thank you. Question there, Guillermo?
Thank you. I'm Guillermo Corbera from the University of Sevilla in Spain. This might be an old question, no, I mean it's outdated, but let me just say, do we intend to substitute person-by-person interaction, that moment in which you're in a classroom with 50 guys and you realize that somebody is not following the right one and you stop to address that doubt that you have seen in his eyes, no? That further question that somebody has raised, and suddenly you are able to drift the shift of the class because you found out that you were going the wrong direction, and somebody has pointed out the good thread. If we lose that, we're losing it all. So then we have to really make precise what is the use of this. It cannot become a substitute. And my fear is, like with any technology, is neutral and can be used. And I fear, maybe it's because I come from Spain where everything that is cuttable is being cut down by the state, but it's clear that if you can cut by half education because you just put it online, you've done a good deal for the state. No? So, okay, that's about.
I think you answered your own question. I think that you pointed out some of the ways in which face-to-face teaching will never go away and never not be important, which is why, in my opinion, MOOC and face-to-face will just become more and more integrated so that we can continue to do better the things that we can only do face-to-face, and that we do better than we could ever do face-to-face the things that we can do by digital technology. In general, I think I want to say that we do have a fear about changing the nature of teaching, and we have a fear about changing the nature of mathematics through the rise of digital technologies and other things. And these are genuine fears. I think that the fear is actually, that fear is an argument for us to stay involved. These changes are going to happen. The internet, digital technology is going to evolve further. And these are our worries about them, and our worries about the possible demise of the things that we value. For example, the things you say, and I share them, are exactly the reason why we need to stay involved. We need to continue having a rational and evidence-based kind of decision-making process about how we see them going. And I like the metaphor I like to think about here is the way that we have abrogated our control of mathematics testing in schools. We have let that go to governments and private institutions that set up testing regimes, and we have lost something about the nature of school mathematics because we didn't take that responsibility and stay involved. So I think we must do that for MOOCs for exactly the reasons you say.
So I would like to add to those very eloquent words one additional warning, and that is if we mathematicians do not build good online content and demonstrate how we can improve our teaching, our interaction with students by augmenting, then non-mathematicians will build bad courses and call them good.
Yeah. Someone back there, yes?
Yeah, I would like to...
No, sorry, lady at the back who hasn't spoken yet.
Hello, from Argentina, Viviana. I have two more fears, I think. The first one is I see I'm very proud of these technologies to use in the class, but I see it quite individualist. How do you plan to promote the socialization between the students, first? And second one is how do you use the errors of the students, this thing that the person from Spain was saying, a very good argument in the classroom is to use the errors of the same students to go on with the class. How can you put these things into this technology? Thank you.
I don't want to hold this. Again, there are things that we value face-to-face for, and I think they always will be. But we should also be thinking that the students have their own ways of communicating, and most of them are digitally enhanced and social media. And I think that this is a really good example of the way that digital technologies enhance what we do. They don't take it over. We're still going to have the joy and the need for people to be face-to-face in groups, arguing, showing what you draw on a whiteboard and so on. But some of these functions students do in ways we never dreamed of through social media. So we should use them as well. It's not a question of either or.
Anyone else on that one? Can I just make one comment for my own use? I put all my lectures, my face-to-face lectures, online for the benefit of those students who missed the course or have problems with UK immigration or whatever it is. And those lectures have been debugged by the students who are in the room at the time. If I'm putting something online but has not been debugged in that way, I have to find other ways of debugging it and other ways of finding out what I am badly explaining and what is not going through. Because if I were to put just a video of myself explaining to an empty room online, I'm sure it will contain errors.
See, I work the opposite way. I leave the bugs in there because that just promotes more reaction.
Right. One more, yes?
This question of implementation, the practical question, how do we do? And we need, as you said, all IT people. You gave the example, I like it, about the game industry, which in a certain sense, many of their tools could probably be necessary if you want to be very innovative. But then, of course, we cannot afford the investments that they have made. In which case, there is a very simple solution. We should develop the software open source And when there is a good one, then everyone else can use it and improve it and build on that. Imagine take and let take if it was closed, where we will be. That's exactly for me the same problem. We have to be extremely responsible there to make the tools we develop for all, for the advancement of teaching in mathematics open to anyone, the content, but also the software in order the different platforms can improve over each other experience. This is a proposal. What do you think?
So I agree with you very much that the real gap right now is the last half meter. All of these online course providers have shown that they can stream content around the world, but there's one gap left, and it's the half meter between here and there. And you're exactly right. We need good software tools for doing high quality course development. I don't know if that's something that is going to be developed or if that's something that's going to evolve out of existing tools. All the stuff that you saw, all the animation in my presentation, it was all done with PowerPoint, sufficiently tweaked. I think it would not take too much to get existing software into a platform that we professors could find very useful.
Matti.
Yes, so our portal, mywebs.com, is completely free. It's based on open source software. Let me mention that high quality, as you put it, like high quality software is needed, and this system called Moodle that we are using is under heavy development by a huge community, and the community is also very helpful towards you. We can report problems to the developers and they will fix it quite immediately. The content in mywebs.com is also free under the CC license. So, and even in the sense that the teacher can download the source code of the content and modify them. In our license, it still says that if it is modified, it must be attributed and uploaded back to our server for the others to use.
A question at the back there, yes? Yes? Yes?
Thank you. Mama Fukwani from University of Yaoundé 1, also African Institute for Mathematical Sciences. I have two comments. The first is a joke. 5 years ago, a colleague from the Faculty of Law in Cameroon was delivering quite a nice course, but with no teaching material available. Students took responsibility to video record the course and start circulating it among themselves. This is to say that whether we want it or not, students will. If we don't use appropriate technology to enhance teaching, students will do this at our place. This is a remark. The second remark is that we are very happy to go to the bank, use the cash machine and get the money, or to do all the booking online. Education has to benefit from the same facility. The real problem is how do we use technology to solve the problem of interaction in mathematics. This is possible, for example, with the WIMS learning platform. It is possible for someone to interact with the computer and learn. For example, there are some functions where you can combine computer algebra and the computer, so that when you enter expression, the computer will make the calculation and give the feedback from direct calculation, not pre-put feedback. So if we don't use technology, students will use it. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, that brings us up to the end of time for this panel, I'm afraid.
I raised my hand like 10 minutes ago.
I know you did, yes, but it does bring us up to time, I'm afraid. I'd like to thank, firstly, the panelists, thank you all very much. And also I thank everyone from the audience for what they've contributed and from the many nods I've seen as various points were being made. I think the points that were made, that for me made the most sense, was people realise it's not one size fits all, and it's not the solution to any problem. Rather, it's part of the solution to a wide range of problems. and people seem to see that. As I mentioned earlier, we will put online a blog for collecting more thoughts. I've got it here, but the URL is deeply unmemorable, so I'll make sure it gets linked and circulated. It'll be linked off the panel on the IMU website, a page on the IMU website, which has the panel membership and so on. So if you go to the IMU website, matthew.org, and search for MOOCs, it will be there tomorrow, I hope. Thank you.